Last but not least, Hector Sanchez is chair of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda. Hector Sanchez is in charge of leading a coalition of 30 national Latino organizations. The NHLA is an umbrella organization that promotes communication, cooperation, and inter-organizational campaigns between major Latino organizations. Mr. Sanchez has highlighted systematic injustices against Latinos at the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, and presided over national campaigns involving immigration, the protection of Social Security, environment and green jobs, young workers campaigns, and improving conditions of Latino workers. Sanchez, thank you for waiting, and thank you for being here.
No, thank you, and thanks for the invitation from the committee to discuss these critical and important issues on behalf of the National Public Policy Agenda. This is the space of unity among the Latino community. This is the space where we come together under one voice to say, these are our priorities, these are the issues that we believe in. And actually, at a time when there is so much focus on Latinos and Mexicans, we want to discuss policy priorities and stop those attacks against our community. It's not really an exaggeration to say that our community is under attack. And this is having a direct impact in the quality of life of our families. It's increasing bullying in our schools against our children. It's increasing hate crimes against Latinos all over the nation. It's increasing and affecting the quality of life in the workplace. So that is why it's so important for us to really get into the depth of the discussion of the public policy priorities. And I'm going to pass this around because of the limited time that we have. It's not going to be enough time to really discuss all these different issues on priorities, but I'm going to mention a couple of the top issues that we would like to make sure are discussed in the context of this conversation. This is the most inclusive priority that we have in the history of NHLA in our 25 years. We really analyze all the different issues that affect our communities. We have our policy positions on criminal justice issues that seriously affect our community. We talk about environmental issues. It's the most inclusive agenda on gender issues. Latinas have the biggest salary theft and wage theft in the nation at this point. And we discuss education, immigration, and all the different issues. We are not a one-issue kind of community. We always get invited to discuss immigration, and sometimes we're not at the table or discussing the different important spaces in the nation when we're discussing everything else that affects our quality of life. But why is immigration so important for our community and for our families? Because it has really been shaping the quality of life that we have in the last 10 years. All these anti-immigrant pieces of legislation that we have seen for almost a decade is shaping how we live. Hate crimes against Latinos increased 50% in the last 5 years against Latinos. Racial profiling in states like Arizona, Alabama, and many other states keep increasing against somebody that looks undocumented. Poverty is affected by all these policies that we have in the nation, in combination with this obsession with deportations that we have seen from this administration. So for us, it's very important to talk about solutions with the president moving in the right direction with DAPA and DACA, but at the same time, we need to move forward with the issue of immigration reform in a manner that makes sense, because it really affects everything related to the Latino community. Belief in the American dream runs strong in the Latino community, that the opportunity to work hard and get a good education will lead to a better quality of life. But for many workers, obstacles stand in their work. Today, Latinos are the most vulnerable workers in the nation. We have the highest levels of death and injuries at work. We have the highest levels of wage theft. We don't get paid the right amount because of the work that we do. And unfortunately for our sisters, there has been a drastic increase on sexual harassment and rape in the workplace, which is totally unacceptable. This is especially true for Latino workers who are represented in low-wage jobs, including in building services, food establishment, agriculture, and home health care. We need increased federal enforcement of worker protections. We as a coalition recommend enactment of the Paycheck Fairness Act. We need to guarantee paid sick leave, defending workers' ability to join unions, increase the minimum wage to 15 per hour by 2050, and extending workers' protections that are currently denied to farm workers, caregivers, domestic workers, and day laborers. All of those sectors are overrepresented by Latino workers. No economic agenda is complete without also taking urgent action to address the ongoing financial crisis in Puerto Rico, which is discussed at the moment. Regardless of what happens in Congress this week or in the weeks to come, we as a nation need to stand by the Puerto Rico and give it the tools necessary to prosper and to improve the standard of living for its people. We also must commit to opportunity in public service. Latinos are some of the most underrepresented when it comes to public service, and there are structural barriers that make it really hard for Latinos to be part of these important spaces of power. As citizens of this nation, we have a right to expect an equal opportunity to exercise of talents and skills through service at all levels of the federal workforce. Unfortunately, Hispanic representation in the federal workforce is only 8.4%, about half of our share of the nation's civilian labor force. We therefore call on the President Obama to issue an executive order with a strong accountability mechanisms that will increase the number of Latinos serving in the federal workforce. To improve Latino representation among presidential appointments, we also launched the Federal Appointments Project in 2013, which has created an infrastructure to identify and support Latino candidates for political appointments. And we have successfully placed a number of appointments in the administration. We look forward to working with the next administration to grow this project. And finally, let me close by saying that our public policy agenda is not simply an agenda for Latino issues. Those are American issues. Our missions align with a goal that we can all stand behind, no matter our background, which is to move this country forward in establishing a most prosperous and inclusive future for all. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez. Questions? Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So thank you for your testimony. And everything you said was really important, but I wanted to ask you to expand on the issue of wage theft, because so many workers, Latino workers and others, spend a lot of time on the job and don't get paid that much to begin with. And then there's this dramatic problem with them not getting the full pay that they've even earned. So would you like to talk about the wage theft issue? How does it manifest itself? How does it come up? Where are some of the sectors that are doing it more? You care to talk about that?
No, that's very important. Latinos are overrepresented in some of the sectors that in which workers are vulnerable, where farm workers, caregivers, restaurant industry, services, etc. We are familiar with a lot of these industries. Unfortunately, in a lot of these spaces, there are not enough protections to make sure that we protect the workers. That is why in this agenda and in unity as a coalition, and we bring conservative organizations, progressive organizations, the experts of every field, we believe that a strong unionization is important for Latino workers to make sure that we provide all the benefits and protections that we need. The issue that you mentioned of wage theft is a very serious issue. Latinos, and particularly Latinas, have the highest levels of wage theft in the nation, which is 54 cents for every dollar, in comparison to 70 cents with our sisters, which is still unacceptable as a nation. But it's a really big wage theft. They are almost making half of what they're supposed to be deserving for the same jobs that they're doing. So that's why we recommend some of those policies. Now, a lot of these statistics and a lot of the situation include undocumented workers. We are a nation that is addicted to cheap, vulnerable, exploitable labor, but we don't want to give them full rights. And I think that's hypocritical. If we really need, and the economy shows that we need all of these workers, we need to make sure that they are fully included in the economy of our nation, and we give them the right wages, and we give them the right ways, including a legal path to be part of our beautiful nation and society.
So I just want to follow up by saying, what you said is absolutely right. The Senate Help Committee did a study on this issue, and they found that fully 26% of all workers were paid less than the legally required minimum wage in the previous work week. and it said foreign-born Latino workers had the highest minimum wage violation rates of any ethnic or racial group, but among U.S.-born workers, there was a significant race differences. African-American workers had a violation rate triple that of white counterparts. So when you said wage theft, you know, they paying people not enough already.
Yep.
At least pay them what they work for. So
Yep.
thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you.
Yes, my question would be, you mentioned sexual harassment and rape. As someone who worked on the Violence Against Women Act of 2013, we're now working on the 2018 VAWA. And so I'd like to hear more about what we can do to help protect Latino women and Mexican American as well.
The issue of gender and with a particular focus on Latinas and immigrants is a top priority. As a coalition, we created the Latina Task Force. The Latina Task Force is the most powerful committee that we have because they have to approve the priorities of every committee with gender lenses. So if the Latina Task Force doesn't approve your priorities, you cannot present to the full body. In that context, we recognize that we were missing some of the issues related to gender, particularly wage theft, but the horrible issue of sexual harassment and rape in the workplace, which is totally unacceptable. We have been collaborating with a number of organizations with the expertise on the issue, including some of the member organizations of the coalition. We have a campaign called Trabajadoras with LACLA, and really looking into what is happening in the workplace that is making these sisters, these women, much more vulnerable. The immigration system that we have in the nation is really increasing the vulnerability of working to a level of extreme that I can say I have talked to some of these sisters. I remember the story of one sister that is a farm worker that had been actually sexually abused by the supervisor for 2 years, single mother. She was so afraid of being deported, all this element of deportations, all these elements of pieces of legislation like HB 56 in Alabama that can go after your children and the legal status of their parents, is really creating a system that is perfect for exploitation of workers. And in that system, unfortunately, we have seen a drastic increase on some of, or serious increase on some of the issues of sexual harassment and rape towards our sisters, and that's why it's important to pay more attention to this issue, and we are going to continue putting pressure from that perspective.
That fear of deportation is very serious, isn't it?
It's a horrible, we had a powerful story from one of our sisters not long ago, and I think it really reflects the only way we can describe it. Imagine losing everything. Sometimes we're so worried and devastated when we lose our jobs, when we lose our house, serious issues when we lose our friends. Imagine that you lose everything at once, and these families are living under such a horrible situation, constantly afraid, in which really evaporizes their rights, their labor rights, their human rights, and their civil rights, when you live under such an element of being afraid. But at the same time, we have seen beautiful examples of power and unity, like the Dreamers, all the mobilization around immigration on these issues. So, but it's very important to understand at the worker level the implications that all of these policies and all of these issues have.
When I was in Flint, Michigan here not very long ago, they were telling us that they were, distributing water at municipal places, and that a lot of people were not coming to get the water because they were afraid of giving their names or just coming in contact with government. There were other times when people came to knock on their doors to give them water, and they wouldn't open up the door because they were afraid of deportation. So it's very, very serious. And then, of course, there's a criminal element, too. You got people who prey on people, and we've seen that in my city. As a matter of fact, I witnessed a very brutal situation where somebody eventually died because apparently this guy assumed that, that he could just take advantage of someone who was in fear of deportation. And it's really sad. Yes.
I know we're getting late in the afternoon, but this is a matter of such urgency that I really have to ask for your guidance. We're now in the early part of June. Before this platform goes to the full platform committee, we will get to June 30th, and the United States Supreme Court is going to hand down its ruling on the Texas case that involves DACA and DAPA. which means that there are millions, literally millions of Americans who are at incredible risk, that their vulnerability to deportation could be dramatically, increased before the end of this month. And so we have to draft a platform. And that platform has to uphold the Democratic Party's commitment to relieve the fear that all these millions of hardworking people and families are living under. What is your recommendation for what we should say in the event the United States Supreme Court turns its back on these people?
Well, that's a critical question, and actually one of our members, Tom Sines from MALDEF, who defended the case and presented the case in front of the Supreme Court. It's a very important question, and obviously one of our recommendations here in our public policy agenda is whoever gets elected, we strongly believe, obviously immigration and reform is the top priority, but we're asking for a continuation in DAPA and DAPA. This is the least that we can do as a nation. We heard the powerful story of the lady that was sitting here with the two daughters. What can be more American than that education, trying to succeed in life, work hard, give back to your communities? What kind of nation are we if we take away the basic element as a dreamer, as a kid that came to this nation with a fall of their own just to be part of this beautiful space? I think it's gonna say a lot about us as a nation. We are gonna fight as a community. It's a top priority. Earning DACA was just an initial step in the right direction for what we need to do as a nation. DAPA is another important step just to provide some of the basic protections for the parents of those dreamers and kids. We cannot move back as a nation. We have been moving in a direction of being more inclusive, being better in the civil rights, the beautiful civil rights movement that happened, the women's rights movement, and now the issue that is happening with all of the immigrations. I don't believe there is a way back on this, and as a community, we're gonna do everything that we can and mobilize around these critical issues.
Yes, Mr. Zogby.
Just
Dr.
one
Zogby.
observation. I really appreciated your entire testimony, but the one part that struck me was when you expressed the concern that the focus oftentimes when people address your community is immigration. That's all, you're a monodimensional group. Believe me, I know what that's like coming from my community. But what's also intriguing about that is that to some extent, we have failed as a party and as a country, those of us concerned about immigration, by making it just the concern of your community and not taking a look at the broad picture. When I look at the DACA numbers and I add them up, Europeans come in 8th place in terms of kids who've taken advantage of DACA. There are tens of thousands of Irish and Polish and other European kids who are fit that DACA category, who've applied for it and secured it. And you can go beyond Europe and see that this is an issue that affects a whole range of people. It is not just a Latino issue. And so if we're gonna win this issue, we've gotta broaden it out and have every ethnic community see that it's their kids, their families, their relatives who are being affected by this issue. It's a crisis for the country as a whole, not just a Latino issue. So thank you
Exactly.
for helping us broaden that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a statement to that, and I think we need to ask the Native Americans to have some input on the immigration. Just a statement.
No.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much. We
Thank
really
you for your time.
appreciate you. All right, to the members, that concludes the scheduled presentations for today. We've heard from many different organizations and many experts, and we appreciate all that they have contributed. And I would like to thank all of the speakers who were here today. Tomorrow, our day will begin with breakfast for members only in the executive room of the Omni Hotel. We will then move back to this room to continue our national platform hearing promptly at 9 a.m. Thank you all very much.